just take a seat, relax, close your eyes, and ask yourself, what does it mean to be happy? This is an age-old question that philosophers, prophets, sages, gurus, and the everyday human being has been trying to understand. What comes to the forefront of your mind, of your spirit, of your heart when you think of happiness? Maybe the rays of sun basking your skin as you lay on a calm beach, a gentle breeze even, loved ones surrounding you, while gentle piano plays in the background. Maybe you're even sipping a nice cold drink. The weather is perfect. All of your worries are left behind. You only have the sound of the ocean, the cool temperature. You can even take a nice deep breath. You're probably smiling right now, thinking of this image or another picture of happiness you can conjure for a moment or two. Now, before the urge to close this video and sail off to the Maldives or to Cancun sets in, let us think more broadly and play out this picture-perfect image. Can this mirage of happiness sustain itself? What is the reality of happiness that we have created in the context of the reality we are forced to exist in? In other words, if we're using this example, how long would it take before the loved ones on this beach, in this utopian visualization, start bickering over who was supposed to pack the sandwiches or the suntan lotion, before the gentle piano becomes a painstaking headache and the warm sun crisps your neck because said loved family member forgot to bring the suntan lotion, before you're telling yourself, damn, I wish I would have just stayed at home.
Oh, Sal! Sal! You can't do it, Sal. Stop! Because if you pull that trigger, Sal, if you pull that trigger, it's all fucking over and you know it. Come on. Has to watch, Sal. Everyone has to see what it takes to keep our little paradise a secret.
This clash of fantasy versus reality illustrates for us as psychologists, social scientists, and philosophers or researchers as to what depiction of happiness is most conducive towards human flourishing in our world. And we're going to delve into that in a multiple step-by-step process. Number one, by discussing the philosophical basis of well-being, that is hedonia, hedonism, which comes from the Epicurean school of philosophy, and Eudaimonia, which comes from the Aristotle, and that understanding of the daemon, which in modern day psychology we probably call actualization, right? And then we'll delve further into the neurobiology and the social context of hedonia and eudaimonia. Our field, which works at both reducing symptoms and enhancing well-being, how can it benefit from our indigenous spiritual traditions? And then looking at the 5 pillars of Islam as one of many foundations, basis for achieving well-being for a believer, for a Muslim or a Mu'min, someone who's deeply entrenched the submission to God as a core pillar of their persona, of their being, right? So with that, let's begin, as I always do in most of my videos, let's begin with this scene from the Italian film Hand of God. It illustrates one brother wanting to live a hedonistic lifestyle and another brother looking forward to the reality he is forced to live in.
Archi, mamma e papà non ci sono più. E noi non siamo ricchi. Dobbiamo capire cosa vogliamo fare da grandi.
No, va bene. Io non ci voglio pensare. È estate. È 9 agosto. Io voglio pensare a Gigliola, alle canne, agli amici. Io voglio pensare un po' alla felicità, Fabio. Tu no? Tu no?
So I also have my PowerPoint, which I presented at the American Psychological Association conference. So I'll be putting that in front of the video as I speak. And this is really cool too because it's touchscreen. In an age where happiness can be brought upon by chemically balanced drugs, the right portion of dopamine and serotonin in our brains, or even through automatic behavioral patterns such as gambling and pornography, is it even okay for us as a society to propel something so unachievable, such as happiness, as the maximum pursuit for a meaningful life? Is there something deeper in our psyches and souls that can help catalyst what it is we want from existence? Ultimately, as it's presented to us in modern psychology, it's a question of short-term bliss, momentary pleasure, transient notions of happiness, and positive emotion, elation, joy, what we call hedonism, or a contrasting philosophical approach, and that is a life worth living is one in which we strive and maintain our nobility, virtues, self-discipline, and moral ethics for longer-term fulfillment. This is called a eudaimonic approach to well-being, and throughout the course of the lecture, I will discuss not just philosophically, but also practically how the two are convergent, and most individuals who endorse a high profile of well-being both endorse high positive emotions, that is high hedonic well-being, and also high eudaimonic well-being, things like meaningful relationships, purpose in life, meaning. As always, I am a graduate student at the Mindfulness, Wellbeing, and Spirituality Lab here at the University of Houston. One of the main research components of our lab work is to understand and measure well-being, as we've done in a classroom such as this, where we give out hedonic well-being and eudaimonic well-being skills before and after we present our mindfulness spiritual lessons, because we want to understand whether our lesson is helping to fluctuate, hoping to increase their short-term profiles of well-being. With that, let's begin. Our first slide delves into where we are currently in the field of positive psychology and how the emergence of measuring well-being came from the historical roots of psychology, which began through a pathological or a medical deficit model. Lots of psychology and lots of healthcare is still, because of the capitalist infrastructure and really just the state of our healthcare, is still driven towards a deficit model. And that is the idea that the sickness resides in the individual, and it's up to the individual to use whatever tools, medication, to cure their symptoms, right? Which is why pharmacology is such a huge driving force in our society, right? Because if the sickness is within you, then yeah, it's just a means of getting the right medication levels to balance out your neurocircuitry, right? In the 60s and 70s, we saw a widening of our understanding of health, and we have that illustrated through the Bronfenbrenner's ecological model, right? So psychologists, health professionals in general, understood that an interaction with the environment was a huge determinant of differing health profiles, right? So looking at things such as neighborhood resources, right? Pollutants in the environment, right? Stable two-parent households, access to school, access to early interventions, right? Even some of those macrocosmic considerations, right? Which country you lived in, right? And that's something I've spoken about extensively on this channel in regards to religiosity, like in this lecture right here, right? I spoke about the fact that people who are highly religious tend to have higher profiles of well-being if they live in a highly religious country. But if you're an atheist who lives in Iran, for example, you probably have lower profiles of well-being, right? But again, as I will talk about through the course of this lecture, a lot of that is also a measurement issue. So with that, let's begin with hedonism. And we can put some clips over here as I speak, which can give you an idea of pure hedonism. There are different strands of hedonistic thought, right? But there are so many, right? I'm showing Wolf of Wall Street right here, right? Superbad, Project X, right? Hedonism comes from the ancient Greek term for pleasure. Pleasure here including pleasant feelings or experiences such as delight, enjoyment, and even broader experiences of love, satisfaction, tranquility. Amongst the first hedonists were Aristippus of Cyrene, who is quoted to have said, "Pleasure is good even if it proceeds from the most unseemly conduct. For even if the action is irregular, still at any rate the resultant pleasure is desirable for its own sake and is good." Conversely, many social scientists and evolutionary psychologists argue that good actions, such as helping others, is innately self-fulfilling, in that we like helping others primarily because it feels good to do so. And there are many articles and scientific journals establishing that fact. Epicurus is arguably the founder of hedonism, as the school is also called Epicureanism and is one of the post-Aristotelian, I can never get that word right, Aristotelian schools of philosophy, along with Stoicism, which is another, we see a huge resurgence of the Stoic ideals. I think there's a YouTube channel called The Daily Stoic, which is markedly contrasting. And here I'm linking Dr. Segur's lecture to learn more. And as he ends in that lecture with a great quote, which I think about often, "Every man suffers, but not every man chooses to pity himself," right? So that right there is a great ideal for the Stoic school of philosophy. So along with Epicureanism, hedonism, Stoicism, we also have skepticism, right? So which is a famous Greek motto of skepticism being, "Perhaps it is possible, maybe," right? So that kind of gives us an idea of the school of skepticism, right? Always hypercritical of all of the different observational trends and ideas of our society. Epicureans separated pleasure into static and kinetic states. Hence, Plato in Timaeus writes, "Bodies feel pleasure when restored to their natural conditions." And I would recommend a reading below in the description, which I'm linking, by Goodell, as it more concretely situates the active role of attaining pleasure in Plato's understanding of the act of measurement.